Part 2 of an essay on criticism by Alexandra Pope. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Of all the causes which conspire to blind man's erring judgment and misguide the mind, what the weak head with strongest bias rules is pride, the never-failing vice of fools. What nature has in worth denied, she gives in large recruits of needful pride. For as in bodies, thus in soul we find what once in blood and spirit swelled with wind. Pride, where wit fails, steps into our defense, and fills up all the mighty void of sense. If once right reason drives that cloud away, truth breaks upon us with resistless days. Trust not yourself, but your defects to know. Make use of every friend and every foe. A little learning is a dangerous thing. Drink deep, or taste not the Pierian spring. There shallow draughts intoxicate the brains, and drinking largely sobers us again. Fired at first sight with what the muse imparts, in fearless youth we tempt the height of art, while from the bounded levels of our minds short views we take, nor see the lens behind, but more advanced behold with strange surprise new distant scenes of endless science rise. So pleased at first the towering Alps we try, mount o'er the Alps and seem to thread the sky. The eternal snows appear already past, and the first clouds on mountains seem the last. But those attained we tremble to survey the growing labors of the lengthened way. The increasing prospect tires our wondering eyes. Hills peep over hills, and Alps on Alps arise. A perfect judge will read each work of wit with the same spirit that the author write, survey the whole, nor seek slight fault to find, where nature moves and rapture warms the mind, nor lose for that malignant dull delight the dangerous pleasure to be charmed with wit. But in such lees as neither herb nor flow, correctly cold and regularly low, that shunning fault one quiet tenor keep, we cannot blame indeed, but we may sleep. In with as nature what affects our hearts is nothing the exactness of peculiar parts. 'Tis not a lip or eye we beauty call, but the joint force and full result of all. Thus when we view some well-proportioned dome, the world's just wonder, and even thine old Rome, no single part unequally surprise, all comes united to the admiring eye. No monstrous height or breadth or length appear, the whole at once is bold and regular. Whoever thinks a faultless piece to see, thinks what ne'er was, nor is, nor e'er shall be. In every work regard the writer's end, since none can compass more than they intend. And if the means be just, the conduct true, applause in spite of trivial faults is due. As men of breeding, sometimes men of wit, to avoid great error must the less commit. Neglect the rules each verbal critic says, for not to know such trifles is a praise. Most critics, fond of some subservient art, still make the whole depend upon a part. They talk of principles, but notions prize, and all to one lovely folly sacrifice. Once on a time, La Mancha's knight, they say, a certain Bart encountering Ring on the Ray, discoursed in terms as just, with looks as sage, as e'er could Dennis of the Grecian stage. Concluding all were desperate sots and fools, who thus depart from Aristotle's rules. Our author, happy in a judge so nice, produced his play, and begged the knight's advice, made him observe the subject and the plot, the manners, passions, unities, what not, all which exact to rules were brought about, were but a combat and a list left out. What? Left the combat out? Exclaimed the knight. Yes, or we must renounce the Stagyrite. Not so, by heaven, he answered in rage. Knights, squires, and steed must enter on the stage. So vast a throng the stage can ne'er contain, then build anew, or act it in a plain. Thus critics of less judgment than caprice, curious, not knowing, not exact, but nice, form short ideas and offend in art, as most in manners, by a love to parts, some to conceit alone their taste confine, and glittering thoughts struck out at every line, pleased with a work when nothing's just or fit, one's glaring chaos and wild heap of wit. Poets, like painters, thus unskilled to trace the naked nature and the living grace, with gold and jewels cover every part, and hide with ornaments their want of art. True wit is nature to advantage dressed, what oft was taught, but ne'er so well expressed. Something whose truth convinced sight we find, that gives us back the image of our mind, as shades more swiftly recommend the light, so modest plainness sets off sprightly wit. For works may have more wit than does them good, as bodies perish through excess of blood. Others for language all their care express, and value books as women men for dress. Their praise is still, their style is excellent, the sense they humbly take upon content. Words are like leaves, and where they most abound, much fruit of sense beneath is rarely found. False eloquence, like the prismatic glass, its gundy colors sprayed on every place. The face of nature we no more survey. All glares alike, without distinction gay. But true expression, like the unchanging sun, clears and improves whatever it shines upon. It gilds all objects, but it alters none. Expression is the dress of thought, and still appears more decent, as more suitable. A vile conceit in pompous words expressed is like a clown in regal purple dress. For different styles with different subjects sought, as several gaps with country, town, and court. Some by old words to fame have made pretence, ancient in phrase, mere moderns in their sense. Such laboured nothings in so strange a style, amazed the unlearned and made the learned smile. Unlucky as fungus so in the play, this spark with awkward vanity display what the fine gentleman wore yesterday, and but so mimic ancients with, at best, as apes are grandiers in their doublets dressed. In words as fashion the same rules will hold, alike fantastic if too new or old. Be not the first by whom the new are tried, not yet the last to lay the old aside, but most by numbers judge a poet's song, and smooth or rough with them is right or wrong. In the bright muse, though thousands charm conspire, her voice is all these tuneful fools admire. Who haunts Parnassus but to please their ear, not mend their minds, as some to church repair? Not for the doctrine, but the music there, these equal syllables alone require. The oft the ear the open vowels tire, while expletives their feeble age do join, and 10 low words oft creep in one dull line, while they ring round the same unvaried chimes, with such returns of still expected rhymes. Wherever you find the cooling western breeze, in the next lines it whispers through the trees. If crystals, streams with pleasing murmurs creep, the reader's threatened not in the vain with sleep. Then at the last and only couplet fraught with some unmeaning thing they call a thought, a needless Alexandrian, ends the song, that, like a wounded snake, drags its slow strength along, leaves such to tune their own dull rhymes, and know what's roundly smooth or languishingly slow, and praise the easy vigour of a line, where Dendrum's strength and Waller's sweetness join. True ease in writing comes from art, not chance, as those move easiest who have learned to dance. 'Tis not enough, no harshness gives offend, the sound must seem an echo to the sense. Soft is the strain when zephyr gently blows, and the smooth stream in smoother numbers flow. But when loud surges lash the sounding shore, the hoarse rough verse should like the torrent roar. When Ajax strives some rock's vast weight to throw, the lion to labours and the words move slow. Not so when swift Camille scores the plain, flies over the unbending corn, and skims along the main. Hear how Timotheus varied lays surprise, and build alternate passions fall and rise, while at each chance the sun of Libya and Jove now burns with glory and then melts with love. Now his fierce eyes with sparkling fiery glow, now sighs stills out and tears begin to flow. Persians and Greeks like turns of nature found, and the world's victor stood subdued by sound. The power of music all our hearts allow, and what Timotheus was is Dryden now. Avoid extremes, and shun the faults of such who still are pleased too little or too much, at every trifle scorn to take offence, that always shows great pride or little sense. Those heads or stomachs are not sure the best, which knows it all and nothing can digest. Yet let not each gay turn their rapture move, for fools admire, but men of sense approve. As things seem large, which we through mist decry, dullness is ever apt to magnify. Some foreign writers, some our own despise, the ancients only, or the moderns prize. Thus with like fate by each man is applied to one small sect, and all are damned beside. Meanly they seek the blessings to confine, and force that sun but on the part to shine, which not alone the southern wit sublimes, but ripens spirits in cold northern climes, which from the first has shone on ages past, and lights the present, and shall warm the last. Though each may feel increases and decays, and see now clearer and now darker days. Regard not then if wit be old or new, but blame the false and value still the true. Some ne'er advance a judgment of their own, but catch spreading notion of the town. They reason and conclude by precedent, and own still nonsense which they ne'er invent. Some judge of authors' names, not works, and then nor praise nor blame the writing, but the man. Of all these several earths the worst is he that in proud dullness joins with quality, a constant critic at the great man's board, to fetch and carry nonsense for my lord. What woeful stuff this madrigal will be in some starved hackney's sonneteer or me! But let a lord once own the happy lines, how the wit brightens, how the styles refines. Before his sacred name flies every fault, and each exalted stanza teems with thought. The vulgar thus through imitation err, as oft the learned by being singular, so much the scorn the crowds, that if the throng by chance go right, they purposely go wrong. So charismatics the plain believers quit, and are but damned for having too much wit. Some praise at morning what they blame at night, but always think the last opinion right. Amused by this is like a mistress used, this hour she's idolized, the next abused, while their weak heads, like towns unfortified, twixt sense and nonsense daily change their mind. Ask them the cause, they're wiser still, they say, and still tomorrow wiser than today. We think our fathers fools, so wise we grow. Our wiser sons no doubt will think us so. Once school divines, these zealous owls overspread, who knew most sentences was deep as read, faith, gospel all seemed made to be disputed, and none had sense enough to be confuted. Scottish, Thomas now in peace remain, amidst their kindred cobwebs in dark flame. If faith itself had different dresses worn, what wonder modes in wit should take their turn, oft leaving what is natural and fifth. The current folly proves the ready wit, and authors think their reputation safe, which lines as long as fools are placed to laugh. Some valuing those of their own side or mind, still make themselves the measure of mankind. Fondly we think we honor merits then, when we but praise ourselves in other men. Parties in wit attend on those of state, and public faction doubles private hate. Pride, malice, folly against Dryden rose, in various shapes of parsons' critics' bows. Some sense survived when Mary's jests were past, for rising merit will buy us up at last. Might he return and bless once more our eyes, new Blackmores and new Milborns must arise. Nay, should great Homer lift his awful head, Zolas again would start up from the dead. Envy will merit as its shade pursues, but like a shadow proves the substance true. For envied with, like Sol eclipsed, makes known the opposing bodied grossness, not its own. When first that sun to powerful beams display, it draws up vapours which obscure its rays. But even those clouds at last adorn its ways, reflect new glories, and augment the day. Be thou the first true merit to befriend his praise is lost whose days still all command. Short is the date, alas, of modern rhymes, and 'tis but just to let them leave bedtime. No longer now that golden age appear, when patriots' wits survived 1,000 years. Now in length of fame our second life is lost, and bare threescore is all even that can boast. Our sons their fathers' failing language see, as such Chaucer is shall Dryden be. So when the faithful pencil has designed some bright idea of the master's mind, where a new world leaps out of his command, and ready nature waits upon his hand, when the ripe colours soften and unite, and swiftly melt into just shade and light, when mellowing years their full perfection give, and each bold figure just begins to leave the treacherous colours the fair art betray, and all the bright creations fade away. Unhappy with, like most mistaken things, atones not for that envy which it brings. In youth alone its empty praise we boast, but soon the short-lived vanity is lost. Like some fair flowing the early spring supplies, that gaily blooms, but even in blooming dies. What is this wit which most our cares employ? The owner's wife that other men enjoy. Then most our troubles still when most admired, and still the more we give, the more required. Whose fame with pains we got, but lose with ease. Sure some to vex, but never all to please. 'Tis what the vicious fear, the virtuous shun. By fools 'tis hated, and by knaves undone. If wit so much from ignorance undergo, ah, let not learning to commence its foe. Of old those met with words who could excel, and such were praised who but endeavoured well. Though triumphs were to generals only due, crowns were reserved to grace the soldiers too. Now they who reach Parnassus' lofty crowns employs their pains to spurn some others down. And while self-love each zealous writer rules, contending with becoming the spots of fools, but still the worst wit most regret commands, for each ill author is as bad a friend. To what base ends, and by what abject ways, are authors urged to choose sacred loss of praise? Ah, ne'er so dire a thirst of glory boast, nor in the critics let the man be lost. Good nature and good sense must ever join. To err is human, to forgive divine. But if in noble minds some dregs remain, not yet purged off of spleen and sore disdain, discharge that rage on more provoking crimes, nor fear a death in these flagitious times, nor pardon while obscenity should find, though with an art conspire to move your mind, but dullness with obscenity must prove, as shameful sure as impotence in love. In the fat age of pleasure, wealth, and ease, sprung the ranks with, and thrived with large increase, when love was all an easy monarch's care, seldom at council, never in a war. Jilts ruled the state, and statesmen based writs. Nay, wits had pensions, and young lords had wit. The fair sat panting at the courtier's play, and not a mask went unimproved away. The modest fan was lifted up no more. The virgins smiled at what they blushed before. The following license of a foreign reign did all the dregs of bold Sussinus drain. Then unbelieving priest reformed the nation, and taught more pleasant methods of salvation, where heaven's free subjects might their rights dispute, lest God himself should seem too absolute. Pulpits their sacred satire learned to spare, and vice admired to find a flatterer there. Encouraged thus, Wit's Titans braved the skies, and the press groaned with license blasphemous. These monsters critics with our darts engaged, here point your thunder and exhaust your rage, yet shun their fault, who scandalously nice will needs mistaken an author into vice. All seem infected, that infected spy, as all looks yellow to the jaundiced eye. End of part 2.